bronze medal, competing US domination, Melissa Stockwell in third.
Edwin Moses leads, followed by Harold Schmidt of West Germany and Danny Harris of the United States.
So one of the things that I wanted to point out was the inspiration that everyone feels from that. I do want to point out something. You were such an early one in the things we're doing with moguls, like that now they're like mimicking a lot of your moves and everything. And so if you were too soon, right? Facts, right? Because if you were now, you'd be breaking the interwebs, right? You were so early in that, right? And I think the question I want to ask each of you, and I'll start with you, Jeremy, is what inspired you to be an Olympian?
Oh, I remember that very, very well. First of all, good morning. It's great to be here. Great to be with all of you. When I was 10 years old, I watched the Albertville Olympics, and I saw a Frenchman by the name of Edgar Grosperon win an Olympic gold medal in front of his hometown. And he was a total daredevil, one of the sport's greatest athletes. And I just remember that day. I'm like, this is what I want to do. And the Olympics is so powerful, and I know we all have similar stories I'm sure we'll hear more about, but that moment to me was magical, and it set the stage for really what was to come for my athletic career.
I love, anytime anybody uses the word magic, I'm all about it. So magical moments. Melissa, what inspired you to be a Paralympian and to chase your dreams?
Sure. So yes, good morning, everybody. So when I grew up, I had both of my legs, and I aspired to be an Olympic gymnast. So I was a big gymnast when I was younger. The 1996 Magnificent Seven. I mean, you got Kim Zamaskal, Shannon Miller. I mean, posters everywhere. I mean, that's who I wanted to be. And obviously, I was in the sport of gymnastics, never made that top level. Went off to college, served in the military, lost my leg in 2004 over in Iraq, and soon after, learned that there was this thing called the Paralympic Games, where I could represent my country on the world's biggest athletic stage, same venues, same idea as the Olympic Games, and it was kind of like I had a second chance. So I knew that after I lost my leg, that somehow, some way, I wanted to be a Paralympian.
That's brilliant, and because movement was always part of your life,
Definitely.
right? You knew that you couldn't be without that.
Exactly.
No,
Yep.
That's brilliant. Edwin.
My story doesn't even make sense. Because, I mean, you look at the video, you look at me running in the '84 Olympics and all that, but my freshman year in high school, I was 5'6", 102 pounds. I didn't realize until like 3 months ago I was the smallest guy on the football team. My junior year, I was 5'7", 117, and I started running hurdles. But I was like this nerd. I took all the math, science, biology, chemistry, physics. I was like Urkel. You see, like old Urkel. Even when I went to college, I was like 5'9", maybe 130. Went to Morehouse. We had no track, no field, no trainers, no weights, jumping fences for 5 years. And 3 years after I went there, because I loved track and field, and just stayed in the sport better, longer than people that were much, much better than me, and just clawed my way to the top. And I lost. I kept losing all the time until I started winning. So my story just makes no sense at all.
I love that.
It makes no sense.
Did you ever see an Olympic event that sparked you? Like, was there a moment where you watched the Olympics and
There was two. I was 13 years old in 1968. John Carlos, Tommy Smith, Bob Beamon, the long jump. We had a bunch of Olympic champions. And then 1972, there was a Ugandan guy named John Akibua who ran 47.82. And I was in high school, and I was just learning how to run hurdles. So I used to fantasize being this guy. Little did I know, 4 years later, I would be hoping to run against him in the Olympics in '76, but Uganda boycotted. So I did break his world record, but I mean, I would have never known. Even 6 months before, I had never even run my event.
And
so
that's
it's a totally unlikely story.
I love that, but that's the conversation here, because each of you have a moment you were sparked by something from an Olympic Games, and you decided that I want to do that, I could do that. And that's the quandary that we're in right now, because children are getting sparked, There's a wonderful uplift that happens after the games, but then this drop off. And so how do we stave that off? How do we stop that from happening? Because you were inspired, it's still happening, but I think that that's the challenge. And have you heard about an instance or something that your movement or your moment sparked and inspired a child? Melissa, have you heard of some story like that, or someone directly told you that?
Yeah, so back in Chicago, I have a nonprofit called Dare to Try. We get athletes with physical disabilities into the sport of triathlon. And we serve youth, adults, injured service members, and there is this one particular moment. So I feel like, a lot of youth come in, they have a disability, and they think, oh, like, here's Melissa, look, she's missing her leg, just like I am. If she can do it, I can do it. So I think that kind of sparks that kind of, motivation, inspiration, or if she can do it, I can do it mindset, which we all need. But there was one particular instance on this little girl. She was 8 years old, missing her leg, just like I was, and she gets bullied at school because kids can be tough. And we get her to do the triathlon, and I do everything with her. I swim, I bike, I run. We cross the finish line, pump our arms. She gets this medal that says she's a triathlete, and she goes back to school, and then she's like the school hero because she is a triathlete. So, I think that's just the inspiration or acknowledgement that we all can have on the younger generation.
Absolutely. Jeremy?
I think it's a tricky challenge because everybody watches the Olympics, and then it kind of goes away for 4 years and then kind of comes back. And as I think about the people that have transcended that, it's really the greatest champions. I think about Eileen Gu last year. She won 2 golds and a silver for China. She's from the US. I'm sure everybody's heard of her in this room. She's in the news every week for doing different things. I mean, she's at Stanford taking tests and going in and being a model for Louis Vuitton and all the things that she's doing. And she's inspiring girls all around the world to not only be a skier. The numbers in China on skiing are insane. You wouldn't believe them if you saw the growth numbers in China on skiing. But she's doing so, and she's inspiring so in a way of academic first and be a good human being. You think about Michael Phelps, and you think about the greatest champions, and so I think the key probably comes back to developing young athletes to be the world's greatest athletes, because I think those are the athletes like Edwin is a good example too. That whether the Olympics are on or not, they're getting publicity. They're showing the races. Michaela Schifrin's another great example this year, as she chased history, becoming the most successful alpine skier in history. So I think the sport really relies on those types of champions and our collective ability to support them, especially in the youth as they're rising to the levels of those athletes.
Yeah, and I think visibility and access and availability of opportunities is really important, right? And creating programs. And one of the things that we've been looking at is if you've seen, and Edwin, I'll direct this to you, any innovative programs out there that are actually staving off the drop, that are clever or imaginative or addressing it in a way that it's enticing young people to stay moving after the games or just stay moving in general, that you've been inspired by yourself?
I think the challenge today is getting the young kids to start moving in a lot of cases.
Yes.
Because they're so locked into their electronic devices. And when I was growing up, we had to wear white shorts, white shirt, white shoes, and white socks for gym class like two days a week for like 4 hours a week, and they don't have that anymore. There's a fight on right now to get physical education, PE, back into the schools on a regular basis. So that's what I think ought to happen. I think during my course of being with Laureus, we've dealt with a lot of innovative programs where when kids come and they want to play and we use the hook of sports to get them accumulated, then we start talking to them about computer science, computer literacy, teenage pregnancy, fitness and health, obesity, diabetes. We talk to them about all these things, STEM. So we try to use sports as a hook to get them accumulated so we can then put the proper people around them to layer on all the other things that are important to them.
Yeah, I think what you were just saying, sports is an amazing convening tool. Movement is an amazing convening tool. And if we could actually use technology to spark you to actually move, right? And I think that you could gamify more things, right? Because let's meet them where they are. And if they're on a device, okay, then how do we actually activate things on the device, right, that spark you? So you don't get an unlock. The cheat code is not available to you until you get up and you do X amount of movement, right? It's registered by your device, and now it unlocks the game for you. So even being able to, I think, to cleverly weave it into the thing that they're enticed by and engaging with all the time, I think is really key, because we have to stave off this drop, because you all inspire in such a magnificent way, but yet we see the drop. But I think that you bringing up the idea of visibility, you bringing up the stories of inspiration, and you bringing up innovative programs is really key. But what would you say if you had, well, you're at Laureus, so you've kind of got like eyes and ears, but if you were king for the day and you could actually decree something, what would be your decree to ensure that we don't have that drop off, that we actually find a way to disrupt that and sustain the momentum from an Olympic and Paralympic Games?
Well, the drop-off occurs, we the athletes, the Olympians, we experience it first before everyone. As soon as most of the marketing is before the Olympics, and then after the Olympics, it's like a few people to get any deals, and then everything drops off for what, 3.5 years? If I had to do it for kids, I would begin to talk to them about fitness and health, things like obesity, and for the kids who have the opportunity to live in the Western world, using their technology to help kids in other parts of the world that don't have water, that get, have to worry about mosquitoes, that have dirty water, and live in situations like that. So it's like two different worlds that exist. We have to always be conscious about what goes on in parts of the world where kids walk 3 miles, with 5 gallons of water to take back home so they can cook and eat every day, versus kids that just get on the bus or play games on their devices.
Yeah, so I think equity is the thing that you would be focused on if you were leading from that amazing platform.
Food, water, disease.
Yes, that's brilliant. I love that. Right, because, listen, we can't dream or we can't move if we have those base needs that we're addressing every single day, right, that can get in the way of any of that. Melissa, if you were leading for the day, right, we gave you the keys to the kingdom, what would be your ideas that you would like to institute and create and decree?
I like all of Edwin's.
Yes.
I'll start with that. But obviously for me, accessibility. I mean, in schools you have, maybe there's kids that are in wheelchairs, they have spinal cord injuries, and there's some schools where they physically cannot get into the gym. So they're playing basketball for gym, and these kids have to sit outside the gym because they can't even get inside. And that is inexcusable. Like, how are you going to have a child grow up with a physical disability thinking that they can be an athlete when they can't even get into the gym? So I think accessibility, having access for everybody to be able to get in there and to be active. I mean, being active sports, whether it's at the grassroots level, in your driveway, in the neighborhood, or at the elite level, I mean, it does so much for all of us. For the 3 of us, I'm sure it's open doors, belief in ourselves that we never imagined. So giving access, making sure everybody has access to that.
I think that's one of the key things, is being able to create permission and feel like you have a place to go and do that. Mm-hmm. Jeremy, you're running the show. You are king for the day.
Well, I think about it under the lens of skiing, which obviously my background comes in, and I agree with Melissa, access. It's probably one of the most expensive sports in all of the Olympic athletics to be able to have access to. I mean, very few kids can afford a day pass. I don't know if there's any skiers in the audience, but you've seen the prices of day passes go up. It's like $200 plus in some ski resorts just to ski. And yes, Vail Resorts and yes, Alterra has given some access through their pass program that puts together a lot of resorts. But I would try to partner with more of those types of companies and the resorts to provide more access. Things like 5th graders ski free, or whatever age. Providing access at a younger age, getting folks on the hill, kids learning how to ski, snowboard, getting involved in that sports community for an economic barrier that's a lot lower than it is today, I think would help. It certainly wouldn't be a panacea, it wouldn't solve the problem, but at least that they would, more folks would have access to experiencing what the mountains are all about.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we always have to remember is there is no panacea, right? I think it's just a matter of us, do the best you can, right, with what you have. And I think the more that we understand that, the better we can be. What is that? Do the best you can until you know better, then when you know better, do better, right? Maya Angelou. And I think that's really important for all of us. So we have some questions from the audience, and I wanted to remind you, I was remiss, and I didn't actually remind you all that you can actually put questions in the main stage session right now and share those, and we'll get as many done as we can.
love this question.
And so here's a great question here. Do you think Olympians and Paralympians can help build narrative around multi-sports and waiting to specialize? Or does it reinforce specialization? Oh.
I love this one.
Oh, that's actually good. That's a bit of a conundrum.
Well, it's unbelievable. I mean, I hear from so many parents, because I was a dual sport athlete, football and
Yes.
skiing, and I didn't specialize ever. I went from the Olympics to the NFL and college. And it's amazing that some parents are telling 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds, like, this is your sport, just play this sport. And I think about my background, I'm like, when I was on the football field, I was gaining ability, both physically and mental ability, to be able to compete in skiing and vice versa, or on the track. And I never specialized. And so I come from the angle of diversification. I come from the angle of unique experiences and kids that, and I grew up with kids that only specialized in were living their parents' dreams, and they were very, very good at a young age, and then 90+% of them got super burned out, hated the sport, had a bad feeling for their parents because they pushed them, and it wasn't even their dream. So obviously, I think the question's great, and I would encourage parents that diversity of sport is a good thing.
And we know it also helps with injury prevention as a former athletic trainer, and there was an ACL conversation yesterday too, and so that is an important thing, right? Having a diversity of experiences and moving your body differently is really key. I'm gonna give you the second question, Melissa, right here. It says, were there any coaches in your life that set the example that you portray now in the work that you do inspiring young athletes? That's a great question.
Good question. Yes, so I swam in the 2008 Paralympic Games, and the late Jimmy Flowers was my swim coach. And he showed me firsthand what a coach can be. The passion behind the sport, you can have fun while you do it. When I think about what I would want to be as a coach, I look at what he was to me as a coach. And I think we all have these coaches or leaders in our life that, as time goes on, you look back and you think, these are the people that have really driven who you want to be. And for me, that was one of them.
I love that. Edwin, I actually want to go back to that first question with you, because I think you've got an interesting insight into, because you were magnificent at what you did in track and field, but did you play any other sports growing up?
He was the smallest one on the football
Yeah,
field, which I can relate to.
Wait, and also, I'm about that diminutive life too, so yes, so just so you know.
I didn't grow, unfortunately.
Yeah, nor did I, yes.
I had a reputation. I was the smallest guy on the football team, but I hit like, you probably know, like Jack Tatum. I hit like
you
that.
were bringing pain.
So
you had bad intentions.
I never realized that I was the smallest guy on the football team until someone sent me the roster 3 months ago. I had no idea. Although I was sitting in the front and the center.
And do you think both of us.
Yeah.
But do you think that it helped you? Like, what was something you took away from being a multi-sport athlete?
Well, I did in track and field. I was a freshman city pole vault winner. I did pole vault, triple jump, high jump. Started off, everyone wanted to be a sprinter. I was too small and didn't have any power to do the 100 and the 200, so they threw me in the 400. And I ran like 56. I did fencing. I was on the gymnastics team. Everybody did fencing. I really liked volleyball, so I did a bunch of sports. We didn't play soccer, my generation. We didn't come up playing soccer, but I played everything, and I didn't specialize until I specialized and I found my perfect event in 1976. Up until then, I was doing everything. I played basketball. I was 5'7". I could get my elbow up to the rim and dunk at 5'7". Had a lot of spring, but I never could make the basketball team because I was too short.
Quote unquote too short.
So
Haters.
I diversified, and I found my right sport by actually being kicked off of the football team. Then I went to track and field and said I'll never play football again, and that's when I started getting better, and it was like 3 or 4 more years before I reached national class level.
So we have one more question, and I want you all to each have time to share some parting thoughts. How do you see NGOs and USOPC combating generation trends in order to keep kids in sports? So there are generational pressures in some cultures, right, in communities, if I'm interpreting that right, that sometimes, they're leaving people out. There's not the access, right, or you've got other things you have to focus on, other things you need to be paying attention to, and we don't have time for play. We don't have time for sport. So what do you think non-governmental organizations can do, right, nonprofits? What kind of messages could they support around that? I'll just have Edwin, because you are in Laureus, right, and so you're over a lot of that. What do you think they could do? Short answer, because I want to make sure everybody has time to
Just
share
to
back.
follow on what Melissa said, accessibility for people who are disabled, but parks, schools, the average place that kids used to go to and depend on after school, you just go back to school and play in the gym. That's not available anymore, so accessibility is really the key.
And I think also letting them understand why that's so important for their mental health and well-being, right? And eliminating those opportunities, right? You're going to be combating something else or dealing with something else that maybe you shouldn't be or don't need to have that energy towards that. So in our parting thoughts for each of you, I'd love for you to just share what impact this group here, because we've been talking about collective energy, collective impact, and that this is a unique convening of a group of people who really can be the decision makers and impact things. How would you leave them thinking about inspiration, and how do we actually create the inspiration necessary to sustain that after your moments? So what would be one little simple little thing that they could think about in their breakout sessions today? I know that you've already talked about accessibility, right? Food, health, safety, welfare, accessibility also for you, but what else could they be thinking about when they go to their breakout sessions today that relates to inspiration? How do we keep people inspired? Jeremy.
Thanks for letting me lead that one off.
Absolutely.
I don't know how to solve all your problems, I'm sorry.
Yes, I know, but I believe in you. You were with the Eagles.
I'm betting on all of you.
There's your answer. I'm
No,
betting on you. No.
I think that, inspiration comes from creating an emotional connection to something. And I
Say
think,
less. Can you repeat that again? Say that one more time. A little louder for the
I
folks in
think
the back.
inspiration comes from creating an emotional connection with something.
You don't have to say anything else.
Okay.
Nailed it. Mic drop, Jeremy Bloom. Melissa.
Can I just second that?
Yes.
Also, I'm a mom of a 5 and 8 year old, and I think like we talk about generational gaps, right? The technology, the devices that kids are on. Like, do you specialize in one sport? And like, I'm living that, and I have no idea like what I'm doing. I'm trying to like figure it out along the way. But it's so obvious when my kids watch a sporting event, they are pumped up. They go out to the backyard and they are kicking a soccer ball, or they have their ball and glove out, and it lasts while that sporting event is on TV, and then it goes away, and it's kind of up to us as parents to be like, all right. It kind of like starts from that ground level. So whether that's in the home, whether that's like these like smaller programs and communities where they make it fun for the kids to go, and like you kind of have these small wins every day that you come home and you're still excited about it. So I see that in my house with my own kids, and it is hard, and I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to it, but I think it starts at the ground level.
I love that. Thank you, Melissa. And Edwin.
I think we have to find collaborative ways to get kids outside, and that, like Melissa said, as quickly as possible after these events that they key into and they get excited to. We have to find ways to get them outside and doing sports. Because you go by parks today, you don't see kids like mobbing at the park like they did in my generation. Everyone was at the park all the time. So we got to get them outside.
And I think one of the other things too is we need to already have an embedding strategy in place around the games so that we're already planning that and we're proactive instead of being reactive.
That's right.
So I want to bless you all with a little poem, and Maya Angelou is important to me, and so people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I appreciate how you've made all of us feel with your Olympic feats and the work that you've done, ongoing work, and I thank you for your time and attention. Please put your hands properly together to our panelists, Jeremy Bloom, Melissa Stockwell, and Edwin Moses.